You're listening to the Perth Property Show, Australia's only weekly property podcast by West Australian experts for West Australian listeners. Catch your latest episode every Monday at 7 a.m.
G'day Perth, welcome to another episode of the Perth Property Show. My name is Trent, your host as always. Every week we get Perth's number one experts in the studio just to have a chinwag about our local market and what's affecting us as investors and homeowners. Today's topic is the 10 common mistakes when doing your first development in Western Australia. To help us out with that conversation, we've got a real estate agent who has seen more developments than I think I've seen in his life. That is Adam Naumovski from the agency. Adam, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Trent.
Adam, let's get into this one really quickly because it is a long one we're going to do. There are 10 points we want to flesh out, okay? First off, when we're thinking about doing developments, there are a number of considerations that most of us haven't thought of. We can drive down the street, we go, oh, they turned that house into next door and now there's 3.
Yeah.
It must be easy.
That's right.
It's not that easy. We'll run through some practical points as well as some financial points to get from A to B. Firstly, let's start off with just picking a property with the wrong zoning.
That's a bit of a doozy, isn't it? Yeah. Look, obviously you need to do your research as much as possible.
You've got some really good examples in Stirling as to how things are changing and have been changing based on need. They're changing it all the time.
Yeah, zonings do change all the time, so it's very important when looking at purchasing a development block to do your research, speak to your local council, see if there's any plans or anything in the works for zoning to potentially change in the future. I think is very important as well because you don't want that happening to you overnight. So zoning is the number one most important thing, especially what's happened recently with the apartments in the city of Stirling where zonings were changed. You could then build 6 apartments instead of building 3 villas. Then 2 years later, they've changed the zoning back. So it's very important to have your finger on the pulse when it comes to that.
Well, imagine being that person who bought in at the top of the Westminster market to do apartments. Maybe things got a bit tight. They thought, look, we'll give it 3-4 years. We're in.
Yep.
And then Stirling changed their mind again.
It happened to quite a few people that we worked with and a few clients in our area as well. They got caught in that transition. It was very unfortunate. If they had to put the plans through, then there's the 2-year allowance to build, even if the zoning did change. But yeah, it did happen to quite a few people. Bought when they had the money to buy or when they were available to buy, didn't want to do the development straight away. Zoning changed, and then all of a sudden you spent $600,000 for a block that's worth potentially $400,000.
I guess it's also easy for a lot of people who haven't done enough research or spoken to enough experts to see a property on a street that maybe has 2 or 3 properties developed on it, and just expect that next door or the house that's not the corner, for example, can do the same thing if they haven't got that context of all the different bonuses and variations and whatnot. And they come to the surveyor and the surveyor says, sorry, mate, what are you trying to do here? There's no way you can do 3.
It's happened before. And once again, it comes down to doing the research just because next door's had a development. How long ago was that development done? Has the zoning changed since then? What's different now with the public open space or with the tree planting that you need to do? All those sort of things make a difference too. So it's definitely very important to get that.
Well, that leads into that next point.
Yes.
Council policy, right? Every council has a different policy on how they allow people to do their zoning. Not only is it just the WAPC zoning, which we can look at the table, it's not just that, is that there's so many other lines that every council in their own unique way
nice way to put it.
will allow you to do your development. What are a couple of things that we might have to consider in terms of council policy?
Yeah, so public open space is the biggest one, I suppose, the 10%, which is a big whack to a development.
For some councils, some not.
Some councils, some not, exactly right. Some councils have now introduced the tree every 500 square metres. You need to have 2 mature age trees planted, which you need certain square meterage for that too, which then hinders the size of your villas, I suppose. Driveways is another beauty, with turning circles in a driveway, all those sorts of things. Yep.
Joondalup, if you want to do a side-by-side, you need 20 metres of frontage, right? If you've got 18 metres and your idea is to do 2 really nice places in Duncraig side-by-side, sorry, mate, not going to happen.
Won't let you do it for 2 square metres. Yeah.
Exactly. You have to do a house behind a house and the market not be paying for that. What else? As much as you might have 10% in Stirling to do a triplex, you go to Joondalup, there is no public open space contribution because they're trying to get people to do developments.
Exactly right. Where City of Stirling has had an influx that's been happening for 10-15 years now. Probably almost trying to make it a bit harder for people to do developments, where Joondalup's trying to get it going.
I think so, very much.
Yep.
Sewer location, number 3. How does that affect people when they're looking to build?
Yeah, it does. We've had one, years ago where it ran right through the middle of the property,
wow.
And you couldn't really...
Can't build anything.
That. Yeah. But usually, from my experience, along the back fence or along the front of the street, if it is along the back fence inside the property, you've then got setbacks off of that sewer line. So that can really affect, especially the last unit in that scenario, courtyard space, etc. Living dining space, you need a setback from that and you're losing almost 20, 30 square metres. It does make a big difference, yes. Your sewer location is crucial.
That's crucial, especially when you've got those 700. Look at City of Joondalup right now. They're now doing triplex on 685, 700 square metres. Every square metre counts at that size. It does,
most definitely. That's really, really small. And, they're probably start incorporating single garages and things like that. But, yeah, if you've then got a sewer line running through and you're losing another 20, 30 squares, good luck getting 3 units on there.
An easy way to check off on that is to look on the My Water website. It's a water corporation site where they give you mapping tools to be able to just check the red line. Does it go through your property or does it go through the neighbour behind or the neighbour to the side? And if it does, how far? Now, they always have the caveat that it's not exact.
100%.
And that's why you get your surveyor to go out there.
Look, another good one is dial before you dig. That gives you all your services. So it gives you your Water Corp, your Western Power, the whole lot. So that will, it's pretty easy. You just map it around, put the diagram around what lot you're looking at purchasing, and it'll email you all the information almost immediately.
It's ridiculous. Of all the government services that we've got that take forever, it's amazing. There's this dial before you dig. Yeah. The second it becomes about liability and, oh my God, I'm just about to dig here, it comes in 5 minutes.
And I'll tell you what, back in the day, we never had that. So it was, you can imagine the time and effort we put into selling a development site by ringing the Water Corp, waiting for, it used to be the mud maps, I think it was called back then, getting them. And
that was only 10 years ago.
Western Power. Now it's all at the there at the touch of a finger. So yeah, it's very, very good. And a dial before you dig on any development site you're looking at for sure will be the first thing you do.
And again, ones you're looking at, you don't even have to buy it yet.
That's right.
Do a dial before you dig.
It's free.
Just when you're looking on realestate.com.
Yeah,
it's free.
Exactly right.
How about slope and retaining? This can be a huge cost to someone.
Yeah, we've seen a few people get stung with these over the years, and even sometimes when it doesn't look that bad to the naked eye, there is actually a bit of retaining involved. So obviously retaining can become pretty expensive. Obviously your fence lines around the property as well is another big expense that you want to look into. And then your sale price, if you've got something really sloping towards the back, or you're going to go with the contour of the land or whatever, obviously it's harder to get in and out with cars, and these sorts of things affect your sale price as well as have a heavy cost with the development stage.
You could have a flat block, however, all your neighbours around you could be a metre up or down from you. And then especially when you're doing a triplex, there's not a lot of space for setbacks. You could have to be doing some really serious retaining around those areas, and then you won't be able to build to the boundary. Yep. For me, on the sewer side, especially just to go back with the slope in turn, if you're sloping up and the sewer's at the back, and you're supposed to be getting your sewerage from the front unit to the back, sometimes it won't work.
There you go. Yeah, it's another great point that people would not even consider, when buying a development site.
I've had to go and get the inspection point looked at by a plumber before buying a place, just to make sure that rear sewer is that far down, 3-4 meters down, so that the front unit can be serviced.
Amazing. Yeah, there you go.
And let's get on to quickly getting inside the home once we're looking at building them. Mm-hmm. The spec of your triplex or the spec of your side-by-side or your apartment even. When you're not building big 4x2s that people can play around in themselves, you sort of have to create that ready-to-go product. The spec makes a massive difference.
Huge difference, especially in a tough market where there's so much available and of similar stock. Spec, when you look at it on a grand scale of doing a development, it doesn't really cost you that much extra to spec it a little bit higher because you're buying 3 times every of the product that you're purchasing. So 40mm stone thick bench tops, got to be stone in my opinion now. Nobody's doing Laminex anymore. You're doing Laminex, you're shooting yourself in the foot. It's not that much more expensive to go stone to Laminex, funny enough. Your floor coverings, your ceiling height is another big thing. Creating a bigger living dining area, creating a bigger space, all very important things. But spec is crucial to selling and crucial to doing a development.
Floor plans, when you're doing the bigger houses, it's not as important to get the floor plan right to the centimetre. As long as you've got the 3 metre by 3 metre bedrooms, you've got quite a lot of open space area. As much as the better floor plans will sell much easier, when it comes down to the smaller units, it's crucial that your floor plan is in some way practical and can maybe help out with getting some sunlight in as well.
Yeah, definitely very, very important when you're working with small spaces. And seen some really, really bad designs over years, but we've seen some great ones too. And it's funny now, you see the 728, which is a standard sort of size block in our areas, usually sort of use a very, very similar floor plan, which has been absolutely maxed out, sewer lines in the same spot, and it's just the one that works and flows really well, with a few differences depending on who's doing the building. But yeah, very, very important, your floor plan. And what we find is usually the most accommodating floor plan would be in the middle unit, because that's usually the hardest one to sell. Getting as much natural light in, making your living dining space as big as possible, still having nice amounts of storage, big master bedroom, slightly smaller second bedroom, and the third bedroom being the smallest and could be almost a study size, because the demographic of buyers buying these properties usually don't use that third bedroom.
What's more important, a bigger al fresco or a bigger living area?
Bigger living area, most definitely.
Let's pull back out of the unit now and look at the street.
Yep.
Is there a point where you come to the conclusion that there's just enough units on this street, or we should change it up?
I don't think so. I don't think, especially in a rezoned area, I don't believe that is a development mistake as far as having too many units on the same street. That means usually, in my opinion, it's the same sort of people living on the street, same sort of demographic, and people want to be around that. So, no, I don't believe that's
So, in terms of picking your street,
very important.
What would help you determine which factors would be a good street and a bad street to do a development?
Obviously, your main roads are always going to be more difficult to sell. That's common knowledge. The quieter the street, cul-de-sacs is the ideal areas you can be doing developments. The way the street is maintained and upkept, is it easy on the eye, or does it look like there's a few rental properties in there, or is there state housing on the street, or is there not? All those things make a big difference. How far away it is to services. Can you get quick and easy access to freeway and highways? And is there close proximity? Is it walking distance to a shop, schools, parks? That's all the main things you look at when picking your street.
Well, we just did number 7 and 8 then.
Yeah. Sorry, I jumped the gun.
No, that's fine. We can flesh it out a bit more.
Yeah.
When I think it's important to note that if you're going to make the choice to go into a unit or an apartment, you're doing it because you're willing to cut down some of the floor space in exchange for location and walk score.
And convenience and lifestyle.
That's exactly right. So what do you think is the most important couple of factors that makes a development most valuable? Is it schools? Is it parks? Is it highway? Is it train station? Is it shopping centres? Which ones do you think make the best value triplex?
Look, once again, it depends on the buyer. If you've got the young families, which a lot of these buyers that are buying this product have got, usually in my experience, about to start a young family or have maybe one child, schools are extremely important. Walking distance to school. One of the parents will drive to work and the other parent will walk the child to the school. Then when you're looking at people who are downsizing into these properties, which we do get quite a bit of as well, they're looking for proximity to shops and to public transport. So depending on which buyer it is, depends on what they're looking for. But all those services and locations are very important.
We can pull it back now, and I think this is most important for development concepts where there's time in the market before you actually get to market. Time risk of your development. We saw this really heavily through your area, especially Adam, in 2014, 2015. If you got in at that time, you better have got that development done bloody quickly.
Yeah, a lot happens, especially over those years. A lot happened in the market. There was a massive shift in prices and a massive shift in land prices as well. So if you're building or you're hanging on the market at that time, there was in some cases almost $50,000 to $60,000 drops per unit in a complex. So
that's a whole profit line gone.
It is. It's gone. It's finished. And in saying that as well, around that time, buyers were paying more for land as well. So by the time they finished the development, they probably could have got the land for about $100,000 cheaper as well. So if you look at that as a whole, it's nearly $250,000, $300,000 over a triplex development. Massive hit. Buyers returning to sellers were then selling at a loss because the market shifted so much. So yeah, picking the right time to buy your land and then picking the right time to start the development. I know no one's got a crystal ball and it's hard to see into the future, but it's very important to gauge what the market's going to do in that time you're going to be on the market, how long it's going to take you to build, what your holding costs are. That's all going to play a major factor to your bottom line.
It's a bit of a consolation, though, that we're at the bottom of the market now, knowing that it's going to take some time. We might get some passive growth we weren't expecting, but also we're building when the builders are hurting the most and giving us the cheapest price.
Exactly
we're buying in at a wholesale price, we're building at a wholesale price, and hopefully we're going to be selling at a more reasonable price than we expected at the end of the day.
I believe so. Obviously, it's still best to work on your worst case scenario.
Conservative numbers, today's numbers,
exactly right, and that's your worst case scenario. Yes. So, obviously things are looking on the up. So yeah, definitely the perfect time right now, even to be buying land and banking it, but to be, like you said, you're building at a lower cost. It's going to take you 12 months to do your development. Prices should have kicked back up by then. Definitely the ideal time.
And one last more technical point. This is number 10 in our common mistakes of doing your first development.
Yeah.
holding costs and GST costs. Can you run us through those implications?
Yes, well, it's very important to factor that in before you go into the whole development process because, if you're doing a development, especially in these times, you're probably running on your 10 to 15% margin, I would say, maybe 20%. Now, you've got to factor in that as soon as a property is sold and settled, you need to pay your GST on that immediately, which is 7%. So there goes 7% straight off the cuff. As well, on top of that is your holding cost. What's it cost you to hold the property throughout? Is it going to take you 12 months or is it going to take you 16 months? It's a big difference. Is it going to take you 8 months? How quickly can you get it done? That's going to determine how much you pay in holding costs. Obviously, it's better as quickly you can build it, quicker you've sold them, the less interest and holding costs you're going to pay, the more profit.
Well, that's the thing. At the end of the development, that's when you've got the most holding costs because you've now got purchase and the development costs at their max.
Correct.
Every month you don't sell them is essentially the highest thousands of dollars per month that you're holding them.
Yes.
And that brings into the point, just a last little consideration, the quicker you can sell them, the better. What gets things sold the quickest for me, I think it's furnishing.
Yes.
Little tip.
Furnishing is a huge one, and that's simply because you're painting a picture for the buyers, what it's going to look like when they're actually living in the home, rather than just walking into an empty space. So, yeah, that's definitely an investment that, in my opinion, a necessity when selling development.
Adam, thanks for coming in. Have you in again soon.
Thanks, mate.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the suburb spotlight now, and we're talking Booragoon. Of course, we've got one person in the room that can talk about that. That is Booragoon's number one agent, Peter Zambotti from Mont Property. Peter, thanks for coming in.
No problem, Trent. Thanks for having me.
Booragoon, what an interesting area. You've got a lot of movement going around Garden City. Booragoon is essentially Garden City, isn't it? And that lifestyle, that future, the excitement of Booragoon is coming from the redevelopment options of that shopping centre. What's happening?
It's a good one, Trent. I mean, Booragoon is really changing based around Garden City. The zoning has been changed because of that, and they're looking to really bring it into the new age with different zonings that allows multi-unit sites, triplex blocks, duplex blocks. So we're getting a lot more buyers and investors now looking in Booragoon because of those changes around the exciting Garden City expansion.
We'll move into the development stuff later, but Risley Street is just going nuts, isn't it?
It's changing
There's
fast.
some huge apartment buildings coming up.
Yeah, and Marmion Street.
Some people would have made a lot of money, dumb luck money, living around there, not having a clue. And then one day someone like you says, your house is worth 1.2 mil. And they've gone, holy moly.
They've gone from 700 to 1.2, 1.3, 1.5 million just based on the zoning of R20 to R100 overnight.
Well, that's like winning the lottery.
Yep.
We'll talk about that later.
For some.
Yeah, lucky for some, right? Let's wind it right back to the start. We always talk about the start of the suburb, the history. When did Booragoon become a place to live, and who was living there? Who was buying there back in the day?
Always young families have been attracted to Booragoon. Reason being its amenities, its plethora of parks. Even the east side of Booragoon, Trent, there's park after park after park. So it's really afforded itself to young families based on the amenities. And that's who we see buying now. And 10 years ago, it was young families, and that continues to be the hotspot so much for the city of Melville. With an affordable budget to get a nice land size, but have the amenities of some of the really expensive blue chip surrounding suburbs. But to get into a good suburb with fantastic amenities and halfway between the city and Freo, you can't go wrong.
You've got both lifestyles. You've got the accessibility of the train station and the freeway, but you've also got the fun of the beach and Freo halfway each way.
You bang in the middle.
You've got Leach Highway and Canning Highway, take your pick, and a fantastic shopping centre that finally, hopefully, is going to start having its upgrade. It's been a bit late, hasn't it?
They're dragging their feet. They say that it's going to be May, but look, nothing in concrete. But if you walk through Garden City, you can see people are planning and certain things are shut down or roped off. So it's imminent, but everyone's looking forward to the changes because it is the hub of Booragoon, and it's really going to bring a lot more people to the area, and it's a 5-star amenity for the suburb and surrounds.
Oh, it's going to be amazing. Even if you don't take into consideration the development blocks, the passive holds, the owner-occupied properties, they're all going to start growing in value for no other reason, in my opinion, than just the amenity is going up. More people want to live there. Supply isn't increasing much. There's not much going on in terms of new land estates in Booragoon.
No.
So when demand goes up, supply is pretty limited. What happens? Price goes up. So I think everyone is going to be up for a good time in the area.
Yeah, people can see that. And we are getting a lot more overseas investors paying attention to Booragoon now, because people understand around major infrastructure, there's more demand, there's more people, which, like you said, Trent, brings prices up. So we are really getting a lot more overseas interest, where we before weren't getting so much of that because it was single residential zoning, and you couldn't unlock the potential of the location and the amenities. But now that they've changed certain pockets, people have more options. So you corner blocks, some are triplex now. You know, your main arteries are R100, then you've got some R80 and R60 zones, and even R40. So there's plenty of options.
That's a good thing. Optionality, not just this blanket triplex for the whole suburb. You just become a denser version of before. It's the optionality, and I think we'll talk about it later. But the city of Melville, geez, they're aggressive. Give me that archetypal buyer off you right now. They got kids, they're husband, wife, they're single. What are they making normally a year? Who's buying off you?
It's really the younger families, mid-30s to late 30s, sometimes early 40s. That's the general band with younger kids that are either going to the Booragoon Primary or Applecross High, depending on the spot. But it's really the younger families. The key is the parks. There's plenty of parks, as I said, and you're getting a bit more yard. So your standard block in Booragoon, 728 square metres, where if you go to the surrounding suburbs for that sort of money, you're going to get a 450, 500 square. So with young kids...
It's already been split up.
Yeah, you've got plenty of room in the backyard for the family to grow, and it's an affordable price point. So it's definitely young families. We do get a few downsizers who want to stay in the area, so they've got a big block and they want to get a little townhouse or a unit in Booragoon because they're familiar with the amenities. But we're also now getting some investor interest because of the zoning change. So we've got a real broad spectrum of buyers looking at the suburb because of the options. But before, it was a little bit one-sided. It was just family. But now it's okay. The amenities are so good here. You've got transport, garden city, parks. Let's invest there. Let's do a development.
Okay. Well, we're naturally segueing into the second part of this chat, and that is price points. It's not the cheapest suburb, let's be honest. It is medium to upper, in my opinion, in terms of demographic. But how cheap can it get in Booragoon, and how expensive, and what are you getting for those prices all the way along? 2x1s are mid to high threes for a 2x1. So that's really your entry point to get into a fairly well maintained complex. Prices go all the way up to well, there's been some sales in early twos back in the day, but really your highest sort of sales are 1.2, 1.3 up to 1.5 at the moment for the Ramble precinct. Yep.
That's flagship streets surrounding Garden City, but your median's about 850 to 880s.
Is that your 4x2? That's your 4x2 and 700?
Yeah, single level, 4x2. Your block value is probably early 8s, so the residual value is not a huge amount, but we're getting a lot of people coming in, buying those and either doing complete renovations or knocking them down and building nice single level homes.
Oh, really? So when were these things built in the first place? Are the 80s builds normally?
The 80s builds are the ones that are staying. It's the other side, your east part of Booragoon, which backs onto Brentwood and Mount Pleasant. They're your late 60s, early 70s, and they're the ones where people are coming in, and there's where the majority of the parks are. That's where people are coming in and knocking down, and instead of building a long, thin, narrow house with a 10-metre frontage, they've got these 18, 20-metre frontage, perfect for single level homes. So we're getting a lot of that, and then that's bringing the area up, and that's where people want to be, that east side of Risley Street, backing onto Ardross, Mount Pleasant, Brentwood.
Yeah, so I guess you're just accessing the city from Leach Highway instead of Canning Highway.
Yeah, yep, and it's the river side of Booragoon, so it holds more prestige because it's closer to the river's edge.
Okay, well, clearly there's just so much optionality, and what we're seeing is more of that is going to come very soon. The reason I really want to talk to you today is development. And obviously I'm a development guy, but Booragoon is, as we said in the preface of this, it's ripe for the picking in so many ways. Talk to us more specifically about where the pockets are for development, what you can turn these things into, and what's currently happening in Booragoon, who's currently taken a punt and have done pretty well.
Really good question, Trent. The main arteries surrounding the activity centre of Garden City have been changed, so they range from R100 on Risley and Marmion or parts of Risley to R80 to R60 and R40. So there's a lot of options. The R100 sites are limited. They are quite sought after because you've got mixed use. You can put residential and commercial, 4-story height limit, opposite Garden City. You can't really go wrong there. So they've been quite popular. There's one major site underway at 555 to 557 Marmion. They're the first guys to pull the trigger, but it looks quite impressive. So I think people will naturally follow that. Zoning hasn't been changed for that long, so it's still in its infancy. But where we're seeing is people now knocking down houses, putting 2 side by sides there. So they've got options of 350 squares. Before, the only option to have a near new house on a small block was the main street of Risey Street, but now you can do that on the back streets. So people are thinking, well, I can get into the area and not be on a main road and get what I want.
So it's accessible to a normal mum and dad investor. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on where your institutional investors are going to get excited. Risley Street, Marmion, right? But most of us can't afford that. What are people who are maybe looking at a property and going, I can live here and there's development potential either now or in the future? What are they paying to get in? Yeah,
so your R40 sites is really what you'd be looking at if you're a mum and dad investor. Anywhere from sort of $850 to $1 million is what you pay for the R40 site, and that's generally 3 townhouses. So what's happening is the downsizers with a bit of foresight will buy that, keep one for themselves, sell the other 2. So that's really the change that's happening quite aggressively is the R40 sites, because the R60, R80 and R100 you do need a lot more capital to unlock the potential of that site and do it justice and pay the premium for the coding. But R40, can't go wrong.
That's good. That's good to hear that both sides of the equation are able to jump in, because they very much could have just locked that level out and narrowed the options for people to move out and downsize. But to have that third option of the townhouses through the 700, 800 square metre blocks, I think that's really important, both for the suburb but also for people to get in and win as well.
Revitalise the area.
Yeah, exactly right. Because then obviously, if you don't, you've got a whole bunch of really old houses and a whole bunch of really new houses, and just nothing sort of in between for people to just keep upgrading. City of Melville, they're pretty aggressive right now.
They're pretty helpful, and they are quite aggressive, as you say. They've got quite large infill targets to meet, and look, there have been the local residents that have opposed this and questioned the need for it, but progress. You've got to go down that path, and City of Melville have been very helpful. They're pro-development within reason. They don't want to change the integrity of the area too much, because people like it for its, it's a peaceful area. It's quiet. It's good for families. They don't want to turn it into a Gold Coast, but they want to revitalise it and unlock its potential, being so close to everything and its surrounding amenities, and you've got transport on the doorstep. So they're doing the right thing. Some people will say not, but we believe that they're not going too far, but they're, like I said, unlocking the proximity to everything there.
They've done something quite unique, in my opinion, the way that they've rezoned the area. A lot of cities will elect to provide split coding on blanket areas. Now, I find that to be quite lazy. What they do essentially is say, look, at the lower zoning, you can't subdivide. At the higher zoning, the only way you're allowed to subdivide is if you do X, Y, Z, A, B, C. And it becomes extremely onerous on the developer, who is generally just a mum and dad investor, to get this thing done. Very confusing as well. Instead, what City of Melville have done is they've specifically changed the coding in specific pockets. So they haven't made it any harder for you to develop. They've just made it very specific that in these areas we want you to build townhouses, or we will incentivise you to do so. In these areas we're incentivising you to build apartments. And in these areas, if you want to do a house behind a house or a side by side, that's what you can do. We're not going to make it any harder than normal. And it just makes it more fluent, easier, less stuffing around at the planning stage, and more confidence for the investor to know exactly what they can do with their block.
And get on with it.
Exactly right. That's my rant. Peter, at the end of the chat, we always talk about the median house price. I ask you that question. Peter, what is the median house price in Booragoon? And if you have that money in your pocket today, what would you buy? 2 buys.
If I had the money in my pocket today to buy as a mum and dad, I would buy in the east pocket of Booragoon a nice flat, single level, old home that I'd rent out for a bit, knock down and rebuild on it. Ideally opposite a park, because you just can't go wrong there, and you have a line of people to buy it off you when you're finished, if you want to sell it. If I was an investor with $880 in my pocket, I would buy something with a coating of R40 backing onto one of the main arteries, so that I've got the townhouses where people can lock and leave and walk to Garden City. I think you can't go wrong with that if you build it right. 3 townhouses, you get the block for near on 900, and away you go. I don't there's no loss there. It's really land value. You're paying nothing for this shell. You can unlock it, and it's got everything around there for an affordable price.
Peter Zambotti, thank you very much for your time today, and good luck for the rest of the year in what I think is one of the more fortunate suburbs and areas of Perth in 2019. And I hope to have you in again for an update soon.
Not a problem, Trent. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Perth Property Show. If you've only just joined the conversation, you can catch up by heading over to our website, perthpropertyshow.com.au, subscribing to the podcast, or joining our Facebook page. Don't forget to tune in next Monday at 7 a.m. for more expert insights, local analysis, and suburb spotlights. Happy hunting!